Welcome back, Time Crunch fans. I'm your host, Coach Adam Pulford. An inspired, well-trained athlete is tough to beat and tough to keep down. And don't hear me wrong on that. Well-trained is a big part of that equation. But to be inspired adds another level to your training and racing and life. On this podcast, we focus a ton on the training side of things most of the time. But today, we're going to talk about the other stuff, the mental side, how to overcome adversity, and how to get up when you're down. We'll also talk about how inspiration plays a huge part or is the cornerstone of it all when it comes to being an athlete. I'm here with no other than the inspiration guru herself, winner of the Paris-Roubaix Femme, stage winner of the Vuelta a España, multi-time national champ from Canada, and two-time Olympian, Miss Alison Jackson. Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, for those who somehow may not know you, can you tell us a little bit of who you are, where you're at, and maybe what team you ride for?
Yeah. Well, I've been around for a few years now. I've put 10 years in the bag as a pro cyclist, which is nuts. I am just as energized about this job and career as when I started. I love what I get to do. I love the people and places and the chaos of the bike racing and the chaos bit of lifestyle that's moving around. But yeah, um, I have a pretty maybe extreme blend of like really serious race side and also really fun, silly side. That I don't know if is seen very often in professional sport on the cyclist side. But yeah, I really just love what I do, and I think if you love what you do, um, you're gonna go far and have a long career and come away with just like a happiness from the journey of it. So yeah, I raced for this is my second year now on EF Education Oatly, the pink team in the peloton. We've got our new 2025 kit with diamonds on it. Raph always does like
diamond
a
encrusted.
diamond encrusted. It's in the thread. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, perfect.
We also had the option to replace all our teeth with diamonds. I said no, but we'll see if Richard Carapaz does or not.
Oh man. Well, that perfect. I can't wait to see the new kit. And all jokes aside, you grew up in an environment that wasn't really all about bike racing, right?
Yeah, no, not at all. Small town, small farm town in rural Alberta. I was back there for the holidays, and it's just full snow. It's not really conducive to bike riding. Like when I grew up, did I even see cyclists out on the road? No. Was that ever something I aspired to be? No. And even now when I go back, now I get to be called hometown hero because some of the Olympic stuff, and even winning Paris-Roubaix actually found its way over to my small town. But yeah, on the farm, when I'm there, I'm asked to do chores just like everybody else. I'm no hero. So it's quite a different upbringing, and an interesting balance to what my life is like now in Europe.
Yeah, totally. And the reason I bring that up, and for our listeners, just full disclaimer here, Allison is not a time crunched cyclist. She has plenty of time to ride her bike, and but her story and the way she races, like she said, she's basically a dynamic duo within herself. In those two elements of being very focused and serious when it comes to bike racing, combined with spinning up that energy and being a little wacky. Like I want you to learn from those two sides. And inspiration is that thread that kind of weaves through it. So, Allison, let's talk about inspiration and just in a general term for all athletes, elite athletes, time crunch athletes, anything in between. What role do you think inspiration plays in any athlete's life?
Yeah, I think, really is that's like why a lot of times we start sport or, like for me, it was the Olympics. I saw people competing in the Olympics and doing things that were amazing. And like to think that, whoa, someone from Canada, someone from some small town Saskatchewan, some other place that could go do something that seems like so elite, that takes so much time, skill, but they accomplish like great things like a gold medal. Wow. So I think even like from early days, like being inspired by athletes that, yeah, hone in such a skill that doesn't happen off the couch. Yeah, I think that's where like most of us even like get into like, why do we start something? It's like
Mhm.
that inspiring moment.
Yeah. That inspiring moment, and then it weaves all over from uh, motivation, drive. Why do you do what you do? And I did a podcast with another one of my athletes, Heather Fisher, where we talked about knowing your why. And if you know your
Mm,
why of why you're racing, why you're at you're toeing the start line, why you're doing the VO2 intervals that you just want to die during. But if you know your why, you'll get through it. You'll get through the hard times. And I think in that way, when you're setting up goals for yourself, if you're a self-coached athlete, or if you have a coach, or if you have a team director and people around you, and you're setting stuff up for the year, you have to you first of all, those people have to believe in you. They have to make sure they're on that same train of where you're going. Otherwise, either kick them off or ask them ask them why they don't believe in that, right? And that's all part of it too. And that kind of polarity of how we inspire, how we base it in kind of realistic expectation. We'll get there here in a second, but that inspiration is, it's almost like the core nucleus of, I don't know, the quantum energy that spins up an athlete. In my weird analogy and opinion.
yep, that was a very sciencey take, but yes.
Well, thank you. So, Allison, I mean, how does inspiration play a role specifically in your life? And then second is, how do you get inspired? I want to hear about like the process of how you get yourself revved up and ready to go.
Yeah, you know what? I think there are so many places to look for inspiration. Um, and honestly, I find it everywhere. And I think that's like I can get so energized, motivated, inspired in so many ways. And yeah, I think my teammates, like one of the best things about having our team camp, we have our early season team camp in November. Like we've all just sort of started, but I see my teammates and like, oh yeah, they're waking up early. They're doing the core. They're having the full carb breakfast. They're, yeah, laying down to rest after. Like they're taking these things serious, and I just think like, oh wow, it is amazing that these humans are choosing the way they live their lifestyle for this big goal, that it's going to take all these little things all year long to make the major goal happen. And I mean, I get so inspired by even just seeing them. Sometimes in the discipline there is joy, and sometimes in the discipline there's just discipline. And both sides, I'm just, you have to be like wow, they enjoy this so much, or just like wow, they're doing it because they know that there's a reason to do it. um so for me, like having my team and my teammates inspire me all the time, and also like keep me in check of like, oh, I see them doing this, and like what can I do, or as well, or that's right, I'm keeping my habits good, and I see that in them. And so yeah, just that inspiration. I think, I mean, I've always been inspired by doing something legendary or something really extra. And I mean, that's in my personality a little bit, to like
Yeah, yeah,
be
totally.
a little bit extra. Um, but I think I love the story that comes out of it. I love just like pushing the boundaries and just seeing like what is possible or what you can discover. So I'm always really inspired by people, musicians, other people that when they're really excellent at what they do, even people who are like love bugs and biology, and they spend so much time learning and trying to understand, like a real passion for something, even if it's totally different than mine, I see that passion and that fires me up. So yeah, I really think you can like look for inspiration in everywhere, in so many corners of life in this world.
I fully agree with that. And I think in order to do that, you need to have your eyes open. You
Yeah,
need to be aware of that, right? And I think too, in the pursuit of like inspiration, in the pursuit of kind of that greatness or honing, the greatness, honing your craft, you start to become aware of that too, and then you can see it in people, you can see it in things, you can see it in processes, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it is everywhere, right? And
yeah,
that leads to more inspiration, right,
yeah.
for yourself.
And
And
being curious, because I think for
totally,
me
yeah,
in my career, by being curious and because I mean cycling wasn't something I wanted to do, but then finding kind of a little bit pathway there and being like, oh, like what if, or like what if I tried, or
mhm,
like, oh, this could be interesting. And if you close doors for yourself already by like closing your curiosity, then yeah, you're closing off doors of being inspired, or yeah, of like potentially a great story.
yeah, no, I agreed. I think one thing to tease out there too is when you're saying, you get inspired by your teammates and their discipline and their work ethic, the culture, right? When you're around that, when you're around good people, when you're around like-minded people, it inspires you to become better yourself. So
Yeah,
iron sharpens iron in that
totally.
way. And for anybody listening to this, that can be like they could think, oh, great, well, you're a professional athlete with a team, good for you, you have that. But you need to learn from that. You need to learn from Allison. Like she has been on several teams and she's had, well, you've had some decision making to do that, but then choosing to stay on, teams that have really good culture and that fit both personality and ambition and goals. I mean, that's part of the gig too. So I think for anybody listening here, start looking for your teammates, training partners, coworkers that support your goofy, silly
Yeah,
habit of things, not hobbit of things. And also like communicate with the family, like get them on board and work together. It's a two-way street to, carve out, if you only have 5 hours of training, maybe this year you carve out an extra hour in the week, or a morning on the weekend where you can get your training in. But again, it's like getting that team together to help sharpen everybody. And I
yeah,
think that's a really good takeaway from what she was just talking about.
yeah. Even I had a roommate in the past couple of years that and she's not a pro athlete, she has a full-time job, whatever. But she was so good every day. She always did this 20-minute workout. And sometimes I'm like, I think she's like more disciplined than me because she never missed it. Or she had this like challenge with herself that she wanted to do like there's like 100 push-ups every day, and she would do it like throughout the day, like 100 push-ups.
Yeah.
And I was like, this girl is amazing. Even though I mean her, okay, 20 minutes or like maybe every day, I'm trying to make like a 6 hour, 4 hour every day. But I mean that doesn't matter, but it was like the intention or the motivation, and you see that in someone else. And that was so inspiring and motivating to me, like doing well with what they have. So again, like yeah, and if you can, for me, that was so motivating, just having the person that was like in my space all the time, being really disciplined and motivated. And that was really inspiring for me, just being like, well, I'm the professional athlete, I better get my workout in. I can have discipline for
Yep.
this too. So yeah, creating
Yeah.
your team around you for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, all this is like good pump up, you know, vibes and everything that we have going on. But the reality is like everybody has some low times too. So when the going gets shitty, when it's cold, it's raining, you're like, oh, I don't really want to crash again today, or it's the cold dark of Canada.
Yep.
How do you stay inspired when stuff's just going sideways?
Yeah, again, there are so many stories out there, you know, sometimes like, yeah, I've had where I had to do like trainer workouts, like 4 hours on the trainer. And like, sometimes it takes me a long time to get like the motivation to get on, but what will I do? Well, sometimes, I can inspire myself by myself, like, remember what you have done, and then like, wow, if like this will translate to that, and okay, like maybe that's the play. Or it's like reading a story, like maybe it's out of, you know, injury, and you have an example, a story of like Rock Heyman, who he was injured before he was on Paris-Roubaix, and he just did so many trainer workouts, and then that was the final year, or like he raced it like 11 years or whatever, and then yeah, he finally won. So then you're like, well, all of his training was like based on the trainer, like he was so motivated, like there's a way that you can like take injury into celebration, or whatever. So I would just like, yeah, look for other stories, even if it's like day by day, you just like pick a new story that you're just like, wow, and then you can take that feeling with you, you know, on the bike or in the training.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think too, in that way, I mean, I don't know if you remember if I shared this with you, but remember the Niels van der Poel speed skating dude that just won all the medals at the Olympics? This is recently. It's like the previous winter. Anyway, he had this manifesto, like 62 page, because people were like, how did you do it? And he's like, I'll tell you how I did it. And he's Nordic. So he writes a 62 page training program of everything that he did. And it blew up the internet for like a hot minute. And for us coaches, nerds in particular,
Yeah,
like I read the whole thing. And I
right.
was like, this is brilliant, because it was down to the juicy detail of how he laid out his training program, how he would lay out every session of it, like every minute of every session. I'm like, this guy's got it dialed, man. And for me, that was like inspiration of
Mm.
like, as much as I maybe want to cut corners here or there or whatever. And like, this guy honed his craft. He spent his whole life doing this. And he was famous for like training for 5 days and taking 2 days off in a row. Essentially, he was so lonely during training that he shifted his rest days to Saturday and Sunday, and then trained like 5 to 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. But he wanted to hang out with his girlfriend and his friends on the weekend. Olympic multi-time medalist. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big like preacher of, you got to keep it fun. If you keep it fun, you
Mhm.
can do the hard stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it for sure. And I think too, like it's that shift of mentality. Look for the fun, look for the joy. And almost this is what I see in you too, versus when I'm watching you, say on television, or I kind of read your body language and stuff, is when other people are like, woe is me, and oh, it's really shitty out. Like the camera comes up on you and you're like,
Yeah,
because it's just it like softens the mood, it lightens things up, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And to make a joke, or to be able to like change that just a little bit, it lightens up people around you as well,
yeah.
you know. And so that's one way of doing it. I mean, of course, you have the boring things of like setting personal goals and having role models, and the team dynamics and stuff that we've talked about, super important. But I think the ownership lies within the self, in order to kind of be that catalytic energy to just change the mood when it gets a little somber.
Totally. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love to do that.
So how'd you learn it? I mean, was it family? Was it you just watched a bunch of Saturday Night Live? I mean, where does that come from?
Well, I think, I mean, I think why I am good at sport is because, so I'm curious about it, but I'm curious in a playful way. And then in a playful way, you have an openness to discover maybe, right, like tactics or a different angle on how to be successful. If you're too stuck in rules, then
Mhm.
it can get a bit frustrating, or uh yeah, you don't have this like perspective on like, oh, what about this, or like, and I really think just like my, yeah, I mean, I've always done life by passion, and even when I race, it's by heart. um but I really think like kids, when we learn something, it's play, and we play, and we can play and be successful. And I think sometimes when we turn adults or professionals, we think we have to be serious to be successful, but actually we can be very successful with still having that play. And within that play, if we keep that play, I think we will have a longer career, a longevity, because it's not getting tiresome or burdensome. We're still like being able to accept the joy and being able to manage the stress and pressure that we have of job and work and racing. Yeah, so I think it's just like being able to keep that playfulness, and yeah, then being able to like soak in those successes, but also not soak in the successes, and then being able to move on with that all in your bones, and being able to also let like failures and disappointments, let it go, and not have that sink in too much, because you're able to move on to the next thing and accept a new like adventure and challenge.
Yeah. On podcasts, speeches I've given to groups of people, I say adults, they forgot how to play,
Yeah.
and then they need to play more. When I do skill sessions on the bike with juniors, it is very different than adults. Adults are standing there like this and soaking in the information and being a very good athlete. Juniors are like, I'm going to go jump on this boulder and I'm going to hop over, and then, I crashed in the grass. Like, I got to pay attention.
Yeah.
I would say somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But what adults can learn is like take some time to play. Instead of just like getting the time in, go hop around in the grass. Go like just learn maybe how your bike moves a little bit. And then, there's a whole cascade of things, but like just play. Have a ride where you're just being playful,
Yeah.
being goofy.
And I think you have to be brave to be bad at something new. And when we're adults, we have found a niche where we're good. And even if we've started athletics and we're like, actually, it's because I'm good and I'm going to get a coach because I can get better. And then you don't want to revert back to not being good at something, because that's an awkward sort of feeling. And as kids, you're so used to just like, you have to be bad at something new. And then over time, you will get better. And I think we forget that as adults, or we also just really like the feeling of being good. And so we're not as open to be bad at something as we learn. And yeah, I think that's like maybe in our mind, we just have to, we have to be brave, have the courage just to be bad and look a bit goofy or silly as like we learn, but we'll get through that.
Yeah, totally. So in my intro, I also said, an inspired, well-trained athlete is, hard to beat, hard to keep down. And well-trained is part of it. You still need to do your training. You can think all the positive thoughts, but unless you get her done, you're not going to have the fitness. You're not going to have the routine of it. So that being said, Allison, question to you is, if a listener right now is like, yeah, sure, she's an elite athlete, must be nice, but sometimes I don't even have the inspiration to do my 75-minute interval session because it's cold, dark, January. I hate the trainer, like all the reasons. I have to do my training. I'm not inspired. What do I do now? What's your advice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have those moments as well.
Right.
And yeah, sometimes it's being able to take a step back and looking at the big picture, and doing it just based out of discipline, like and yeah, it might not be pretty or whatever, but just do. Even sometimes when I'm like, wow, I'm so tired, I'm going to do this workout, and I'm meant to do it at threshold, and all I can manage is tempo. But for myself, I give myself positive feedback from that, because I'm like, good job, Allison, you did something. And like, that consistency and stuff is going to build, compound. Or like, oh, I'm supposed to do 3 hours today, and actually maybe whatever came up, and now I'm only going to be able to do 2. But well, I did too. And at least like you're doing. And I think then the next time that comes around, or when you're like, oh, I'm so tired, I can't imagine doing this workout. But then you do it and you're like, oh, actually, I did it. And then you're like, wow,
Right.
okay, I'm going to keep that in mind for next time. Then next time you come, you're like, there's no way I'm going to do this. And you're like, well, maybe. Remember that last time? Okay, well, you know, use yourself as the inspiration. Like you collect these reference points that you can use to help yourself in future times. Yeah, and sometimes it's just not pretty.
Yeah. Straight up.
Yeah.
And I think too, like some of the advice I give to athletes is take action before you let your emotion
Mm,
dictate anything. Right. So I feel it's like, here's the workout plan. Let's just start.
yeah.
And two, with some of your training, some days I'm like, okay, just go out, let it come to you. Take a nice long warm up, and before you hit the intervals, then make the decision. Use the warm up rule as your
Yeah.
guide.
Yeah.
And
And
sometimes you
sometimes,
open up, right?
yeah, sometimes I've had to do like an hour and a half warm up
Right.
because it's like sometimes it just like takes long enough, or you get into like a feel, and then, oh, okay, my body gets it. And then, okay, then we can try. And then, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll just do like one of three. Okay, well, maybe I can do two of three. Well, maybe I can do half of the third one. Oh, I did the third one. You know, like just these little like mind games to like help yourself get through. Or
Yep.
like we've had it before where even both of us have been caught in the winter, and it'll just be like that little phone call while you're on the trainer warming up,
Hmm.
just to
Hmm.
get over that 20 minutes. That first like 20 minutes is the hardest, so just like call the friend, catch up, just get a few
Yep.
like good feeling like social endorphins, but and until the physical endorphins kick in, and then do the workout.
That's right. That's right. A couple different occasions I have called AJ when I start my warm up, and then we usually talk for like 45, 60 minutes or so, and then I like look down. I'm like, oh man, I'm almost done with my ride. This
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, good distraction for sure. So yeah, I guess in that way, we're not saying if you can dream it, you can achieve it. There's more to that, right? Like, sure, dream. I think that's really important. You have to let your mind, play and dance and go places to get some of these like legendary things. Like, as AJ already alluded to, like one of the things that really inspires her and motivates her is swinging big, swinging for the fence, right? And sometimes when she comes with those goals, I'm like, that's a pretty big goal. But then we start to think and work with people around her as well as her team manager, her director, other teammates. It's like, how do we get that done? Right. Then we go through kind of that detailed line item thing of how we're going to do this within the race, the progressive buildups, all of these things. And really it comes back to having the realistic expectations and also the aggressive but realistic actionable goals. And so when you're dreaming up something big, cool, write it down. Then you want to work with good people around you. You want to work with your brain and you want to figure out that process of how to get there. And that's what we call process goals. So in your dreaming process, Allison, do you constrict yourself? Do you set a time and place to dream? Like where do the dreams come from? Where do the goals come from? And am I right in that you come up with some pretty wacky shit and then it's up to the rest of us to help you get there?
Yes, because I think when you dream your goals, you can't put a ceiling on it. You know, there's a way where you can be practical.
Hmm.
Like this makes sense. Or like, could I win Paris-Roubaix again? Probably. Could I win the Tour de France? Well, that might be like a
Right.
extreme, but like don't stop yourself from the dreaming, and then create see if you can create a plan with your experts and professionals to try to get there. But I think you have to like in order for a Canadian to have won Paris-Roubaix, no male or female in North America has ever won this race. You know, no Canadian has ever won a monument. So like, why would it be me? Well, why not? So sometimes, right, in order to be the first, that's hard, and you have to dream big and be a bit crazy or wild. I mean, even this film about the girl in the sea.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we wanted to talk about that, and that didn't make it into the outline. So let's talk about that now. Um, okay, so Young Woman in the Sea, I believe is the title
Yes.
of it, right? And I watched it over holiday break with Kristen and her parents. Her parents actually were the ones that were like, "We need to watch this," and we're like, "Okay." I didn't know anything about it. We watched it, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember vaguely the story." And go, Allison. What did we learn from it?
I mean,
Oh, I
in
sent it to
order,
you, and I was like, "Watch this," and you're like, "I already have."
I've already have. And I
Yep.
was so inspired by this story, but also how the character who is the legend in the story,
Trudy.
and she's the one that she's the first woman, the first person to swim across the English Channel, and but also all the barriers of like, no, well, one, girls don't do swimming. Like, oh,
Mhm.
in Australia they did, but they don't do the swimming. Even they whatever they made it to the Olympics, but then they weren't allowed to train for 3 weeks before then because the boys were using the pool. Like, there's just
It's
so many things
wild.
that they had to overcome. But I think what was so um it but it wasn't her making that happen for herself. It was actually her mom, who, right, would be even in a decade or a generation before her that would have even less opportunity, but for her to see that something could be possible and we're going to push beyond some boundaries. So she opens the pathway, and her sister, this girl's older sister, gets
Mhm.
accepted into like the swimming program, which creates now like a place that she can dream to go to. She gets it, she's like the second one that's following that pathway, and it takes like those people before to create an environment and culture to then support her to do something outstanding and
Huge.
amazing.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. And to bring some context to that, this has taken place like in the like
40
1920s or something like
over
that,
20s, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Was in the 20s.
yeah,
German immigrants, New York City, they become the sisters become swimmers. She is the first woman to swim the English Channel, and there's her coach sabotages her. There's sabotage at the Olympics, like one Paris Olympics, the first Paralympics, VII, so eighth Olympics, maybe. Man, we're gonna get butchered for rambling on like this. But the main message is watch the movie Young Woman in the Sea, because the inspiration of like athletics, overcoming adversity, women in sport, and some of those like crazy things that are kind of still occurring with this suppression of like not supporting women and the equal opportunity and equal pay. I mean, man, it's an incredible movie. I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad I sent it to you. I'm glad you already watched it even before it happened. But if you want some inspiration, that is one film that everybody should watch
yeah.
for sure.
And I think like it goes on to say that you have to dream bigger than what you see as possible sometimes. And that's where I mean, for women, that's where we grow women's sports, where we see now what's possible that we haven't seen before. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think, yeah, when we set goals, we have to have a realm of that. But I think for me this year, what I did an audit of my life of 2024. And basically, I used my camera roll to sort of remember like what happened in all these months. And you see the ups and downs of your life, because you have to first see where you're at to know
Hmm.
where you can go. Like, where have you come? And then where can you go? Because if you don't know where you are right now, then I think it's hard to like figure out the next steps or maybe even see the trend of where it's possible for you to go. I think even when we look at some of the goals that we set for last year, if we reach them or not, but then we use those as stepping stones to be like, oh, actually now this could be a goal, or how we can use these things to rearrange what is possible, or what we would need to do or change in order to make that goal happen. Um, and I thought that was so fun. Some things that I pulled out of that was like, I saw all these photos of me at bike races, even bike, like Vuelta, great race for me last year. I was flying every day. I always said to the team, I feel amazing. I mean, I won, the first stage, the first Grand Tour stage that the team had won yet. But you know what, there's other races before that, like Nieuwsblad, so like opening weekend in Belgium. That's kind of a nothing race for me. Like I don't have particular memories of it, but I see photos of it. Yeah, it's muddy, it's whatever. I'm smiling so big, like it looks like I love bike racing. And I was like, you know what? Even in the moments that aren't my highlight moments of the year, I love what I'm doing. And that for me was like a little check-in that was like, you know what? I love it whether I'm losing or I'm winning. And I think that is a really powerful like motivator or centering for me to be like, well, okay, I mean, in the next years, yeah, I'm going to keep bike racing because I love it. I'm going to enter that must have been really fun. These other races that even if they're not like my key races of the year, I'm really looking forward to them and performing in these races. So yeah, figuring out where you've come from, and then that helps you figure out where you can go next and where you can set your next goals.
And I mean, that's a really good summary point. And I think however you do it, looking at your camera roll or looking at the 900 hours of data from training for Allison, for example, and being able to establish where you're at, where you want to go, where you've been. And that's how we determine the plans, the objectives, the goals, and the A priority races for athletes like Allison, athletes like that are on her team, and then we work from there. Strengths and weaknesses, athlete phenotypes, the type of rider that they are. Allison's an all rounder, okay. And what she was saying before is like some of those classics races that's prime for her. She's an opportunistic rider. She's super crafty. If they make a super hilly Tour de France, like that's not her jam as much, but then she can look for good races within the stage itself. That's how we start to shore up the strengths, weaknesses, and make those goals. So just a little bit behind the scenes work on there, but use your camera roll to decide. So to bring this thing home, I think it's really important to recognize that inspiration, as AJ said, inspiration can come from literally anywhere. And it's not to say that we want to become robots and feel nothing. We're humans. Feeling every emotion is rich. You should feel that. However, you can take action. You can take action in just like starting to ride your bike before you let the emotion take over. Okay. Or you can, when it's just like shitty all around, you can crack a smile and be like, huh, you know what? I'm riding my bike. Or, whatever comes to you is just like change the mood.
Yeah.
Watch Allison race and you'll see it. Okay. So those are my summary points. Allison, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, be open to play, be curious, and by being curious and being playful, I think you'll find inspiration in a lot of different corners, maybe in surprising people in places that isn't, you don't have to be inspired by athletes to be an athlete. You don't have to be inspired by musicians to be a musician. You can see a lot of like great qualities in the people at home and around you, and use that to inspire you for your goals and to do the hard things.
Yeah. And one thing that just popped in my head right now is like, as you're finding that inspiration in that process is like get other good people around you. And I think a good training partner,
Yeah.
good people like in that cultural space, iron sharpens iron. So like get around good people and you'll get pumped up with them. I think that's also super important. So, Allison, if people want to get pumped up from afar and they want more AJ in their life, where do we find you? Where on the socials? Do you have a website, a radio talk show? I don't know. What do you got going on these days?
Yeah, we're working on that radio talk show.
AM 1090.
Exactly.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
And every other episode will be like a recap of the Edmonton Oilers NHL game. Yeah, no, I mean, Instagram is where I post all my best stuff. That's at Ali Action Jackson, so ALI Action Jackson. And yeah, you'll find lots of fun stuff there. You can always post about what next races are coming up. Also like the fun, goofy side around racing. If you want more of the really race stuff, then yeah, the team page is EF Education Oatly is the bike team. So yeah, follow us along, cheer us on, come meet us out at the bike races, and bring some donuts.
Well, you heard it, folks. Get to some bike races, bring some donuts, and follow every inch of the way by following the team and AJ on Instagram. So, Allison, thank you for taking time. Thanks for joining us today and just sharing some of your knowledge and inspiration with our listeners. I know everybody will soak it up and definitely benefit from it.
My pleasure, always.